Jeff Darlington is all over the Deshaun Watson story, ESPN NFL reporter, kind enough to join us. Jeff, let me start with last night, the NFLPA's statement that they sent out, kind of a preemptive strike, sort of challenging the NFL to say, hey, you guys have this independent arbitrator. We both agreed on this, and we're willing to accept whatever she decides. And it felt like they had to know something. What was your initial thought when you saw the NFLPA's statement?
Yeah, Dan, one of two scenarios. Number one, maybe they knew something, but number two, the other side of this is that they obviously recognize that they agreed to, in the collective bargaining agreement, the NFLPA agreed to allow an appeals process that ultimately gets decided by Roger Goodell. So, of course, they want the NFL to say, oh, yeah, we'll accept what Sue Robinson says, because ultimately they know that Roger Goodell, in the case of appeal, gets to make the final decision. So, in part, this is, I think, trying to win over the court of public opinion, because they fully know the NFL was not about to give up that power.
You think that the commissioner will appeal this?
So I'm not saying I know that. Look, it's a 6-game suspension. The NFL proposed a 1-year suspension at the time of the original hearing with Sue Robinson. So Roger Goodell has a decision to make here. Does he want to respect the process that includes the disciplinary officer overseeing this in Sue Robinson, who was agreed upon by the NFL and the NFLPA, or does he want to impose the power that was also agreed upon, which allows him to trump everything? I guess the point in all this is we act like this new disciplinary process takes Roger Goodell out of the equation. No longer is he the judge, the jury, and the executioner. But really, ultimately, if the NFL decides they don't like the punishment, he is still exactly that.
I don't know how they came up with this agreement that you have an independent judge, and let's take Roger Goodell's power away, but then if Roger Goodell wants to use his power, they gave it right back to him.
It makes no sense to me, and most notably, it makes no sense that the NFLPA would have agreed to this. It's silly. Literally the last line, Dan, of the section in the CBA about this, if either side appeals, is the commissioner will issue a written decision that will constitute full, final, and complete disposition of the dispute. So everything else feels like a dog and pony show. If the commissioner wants to do something, he can do it.
Have you seen the ruling?
No, not yet. I've read excerpts that obviously other people have reported, but I haven't seen the full ruling myself.
What has stood out so far?
I think it was a little predictable to me in terms of Sue Robinson essentially saying that, nothing he did was proven to be illegal, but he did, jeopardize the personal conduct policy. I mean, that's I don't know why it took months to conclude that. Like, that feels like the most obvious thing in the world when you have, this many women alleging wrongdoing against. We've seen precedent of other punishments in the past come down for less accusations, whether it be Ezekiel Elliott or Ben. I'm not saying less. I'm saying fewer accusations. This is dozens of women compared to, in the instances of Ezekiel Elliott and Ben Roethlisberger, one allegation. It's not about, to me, all of this should be viewed in the scope of legal findings, right? Everybody is making decisions based on legality, not moral compass. And you can never convince me otherwise in this situation.
But I also wonder, it's about Deshaun Watson, but is it about a lot more? Because this feels like precedent long term.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what my point is there. For me, when I look at all of this, whether it's the NFL, the NFLPA, Sue Robinson, Deshaun Watson's side, these decisions are not being made through a moral lens. They're being made for the purposes of legal protection and future precedent. Yeah. 100%. As much as there will be outrage based on either side of it, whatever was going to come down, nobody else that's making these decisions is looking at it through that lens. All they're looking at it is whether we want to avoid the courtroom. I mean, the NFL was willing to take Tom Brady to court over a 4-game suspension about deflating footballs. If they do the same in this situation, what does that tell you?
What do you think the reaction is going to be? I was told this morning by a source that the NFL has pushed for an indefinite suspension. They don't want to appear weak on this, but if the commissioner doesn't appeal, how does that go?
So that's why I feel like all along this has been essentially a PR battle leading up to this moment. It's the same reason why you saw 6 to 10 different reporters the week of the hearing say the NFL is suggesting a 1-year suspension. Yeah. The NFL wanted everybody to know that they wanted to go hard on Deshaun Watson at that moment. So now Sue Robinson comes down with her ruling, and ultimately we're all left to say, well, the NFL did want this to be more than that. Again, I think it's everybody basically trying to make sure that they come across as the public wants them to. That to me is what's so fascinating about the next 3 days and whether or not appeal winds up being made by the NFL or the NFLPA. If they could potentially just make this all go away by everybody just sitting on their hands and not appealing.
Jeff, thank you. I know you got a busy day. We appreciate your time. Great work on this. Thank you again.
Thanks, Dan.
That's Jeff Darlington, ESPN NFL reporter.